if I just stand here for a while, however long, an hour, and without moving the phone, turn the screen on, will there be an orientation change?
That is a technical question for an expert that we had up here yesterday. I am not an expert, and I am not a phone expert. So
where I'm going with that is simply, you don't know yourself in preparing this timeline whether the orientation changes that you're putting on here correspond with movement of the phone at that moment.
I do not. I'm going off of data I was given from phone experts that gave me the data and has been put on this timeline.
I'm going to turn now to the timeline and really focus on the timeline for Maggie Murdaugh. And I'm going to skip, kind of close to the time that we're...
Are you still on the condensed or the full?
I'm going to be on the condensed the entire
Okay.
time. I'm not going to refer to the other one. Okay. And I want to start on page 17 with that group text that Maggie Murdaugh read that came in at 8:31, but she read it at 8:49:26.
Okay.
And I guess the actual reading of that would be on page 19 for your reference. We'll start there.
On page 19, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
You have some screen off on times here, but you didn't put every time the screen went on and off, did you?
I do not recall. I'd have to look at what was given.
So you don't know if the screen of her screen went off at 8:49:28, came back on.
Everything should be on this document.
Okay. Did her screen go off at 8:49:28 and come back on at 8:53:08?
I have a screen on at 8:49:20.
And when did it go off?
I do not see it on here.
Well, let me ask it this way. Do you know that whether the screen went off at 8:49:28 and came back on at 8:53:08?
8:53. I do not unless I have it on here.
And then she has steps that begin at 8:53:15. Is that correct?
For this document, yes.
When you were looking at the step data, did you look at the corresponding distance data that goes to the step data?
I was just provided the timestamp and then the steps.
Are you aware that the phone in the same database keeps distance data with the step data?
I have been made aware of that.
But you have not looked at any of that distance data?
I was told that it's not accurate, it's not reliable, the distance, so I did not focus in on that.
So, would you think that it is possibly, well, just as an investigator, on your spreadsheet, I won't bother to put it up, but you had a bunch of time periods where Alec had steps, different times. Do you think there would be any relevance to whether the number of feet per step and all those different increments was extremely consistent?
Is there any relevance to it?
Would it maybe suggest the same person was walking?
Objections overruled.
I would have to, I didn't do the feet per step, so I'd have to see the data.
I understand that, and the
Yeah.
question is, would there be any relevance to an investigation to seeing that the feet per step were extremely consistent for disparate time periods of the same phone?
Like I said, this was just a tool that we used. It could be, it just was not explored.
And if this time period, 8:53 with Maggie Murdaugh's steps to 8:55:32, if the distance covered in that time were short, meaning she was moving particularly slowly, could that have any relevance?
It depends, but that distance is, we're told, is highly inaccurate, and everything is an estimate. So even the steps, that's we're told by the phone expert that's an estimate. That's not an exact number. The same, I would assume, for the distance.
So you don't think, I mean, you did not check to see if the speed at which Maggie Murdaugh was moving on that very last increment, the last time the phone says she was ever walking, there was no, how fast is she going? Is she running? Is she creeping? No one looked at that.
Objection, facts not in evidence.
Objection overruled.
I did not look at that, no. I cannot say for anyone else.
And the same question for Alex Murdaugh. Did anyone look for, I think you have, over 8 of these increments listed out, whether he was going particularly fast, unusually fast for him, unusually slow for him, the same speed he always goes. Did anyone look at that?
All we have here is the data that is on that sheet.
And you do have these steps per minute, but do you have any data suggesting that within, and I'll pick one just to make the question simpler, Alex Murdaugh's first, well, I'll pick an even easier one, entry number 30.
Okay.
Which is when he's at Alameda and then part of when he's leaving Alameda, is that correct?
That is correct, based by the time.
And it says 60 steps over almost just a little short of 10 minutes.
I believe so, yep.
So of course it's slightly more than 6 steps per minute, which would be a
That's
step
correct.
every 10 seconds. So this time period is not saying that he's going that many steps per minute, right? It's saying he walked and then he didn't walk and he walked. Is that fair?
It's just giving us an analysis, a general overview of, our estimated steps that it gives us, and then estimated steps per minute. That's all it is. It's just a general.
Well, I'll just ask open-ended. Why is this last column steps per minute here? Why are you presenting this?
It's just another way to present the data.
So turning back to, I think we were on page 19.
Okay.
And Maggie Murdaugh's phone is walking. Now we had from previous testimony an activation of the Siri user interface with a side button. Did you recall that from previous testimony?
I do not, but it could have been.
Okay, you don't recall previous testimony about that. Can we bring up Defense Exhibit 41? And there's a begin and end. It's all the same time there in the bottom couple rows. You can see 8:53:20.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this refreshes or if you recall, or if perhaps you know from experience that the Siri interface can be activated by squeezing and holding the right button on the phone. Do you know that?
I believe so, if you have it, activated to do that.
So the phone's walking. It's in somebody's hand. Now, this is something that's not in your timeline, but again was certainly discussed with Lieutenant Dove. 8:54:32, the screen comes on, and a couple seconds later, there's a camera access. Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay, and that's not on your timeline?
It is not.
Okay. Now that came up in testimony with both experts, and I believe, do you recall Lieutenant Dove said that it was possible to find out what caused that, but he had not himself looked to see.
That's correct.
And I believe investigator Grubb said he did not know why. Is that correct?
I believe so.
But it's knowable, according to the previous testimony,
That's correct.
but no one's checked to see.
To my knowledge, no.
And then after that, there's some orientation changes, and then finally the screen goes off, I believe, for an more extended period of time at 8:55:36. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, after this period, there's nothing else that happens with her phone other than missed calls and texts, except that final orientation change. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Now, does that fact that we aren't seeing anything after 8:55:36, does that mean that she was dead at 8:55:36?
Like I said, this is just data that I plotted.
So the answer is no?
I don't
It
know
does
that
not
answer.
mean that?
I have to go by the data here, and there's no activity.
Right.
You can take that however you want, but there's no activity.
I mean, is it fair, and this isn't trying to be tricky, if use of the phone ceases as time goes on, it's more and more likely there's something amiss, right? The first second no
assume
one's
so,
using
yeah.
the phone is normal. I mean, someone might easily go, even Paul might go 5 minutes without using his phone, but as you keep going on, it gets a little more likely something's wrong, right? Is that fair?
I would say so.
Okay.
But
So
you have it
it's
at
not,
8
it's not an immediate thing that, well, the last,
Russ wouldn't be able to finish the answer he started.
I apologize, Your Honor, I honestly thought he had finished.
I'm good. Go ahead.
So it wouldn't be fair to say that if the last usage was at some particular second that the person was dead that second, right? It would create an inference that would increase in strength over time that no one's using the phone, something's wrong, right?
I can't answer that. I mean, I don't have the knowledge on that.
Do you recall in previous testimony that Special Agent Owen said with regard to Almeida and I think a blue raincoat, that it would take, in his estimation, 5 to 10 minutes to dispose of evidence already wrapped up? From this, do you recall that?
I do recall.
Okay. So to be consistent with the data you have here, well, let me ask this: how long with the test drives was to drive from the kennels to the main house?
I know we did various ones. I'd have to look at the data. We did at various speeds. It was very
Minute,
short.
15 seconds?
That would be a lot, I would say.
Okay. So, and we know that Alex's phone is at the house, right, from 8. It got left at the house. It's not going anywhere since it was up the house with the family.
I just show no activity on it.
Right.
You can assume it is at the house.
But it started showing activity again at 9:02 and 18 seconds. That's when the steps start.
That is correct. 283 steps.
So from that 8:55:36 to 9:02 with a minute and some seconds to get up to the house, you would have like 5 minutes if it were him to do everything and get back to the house in his house to the phone. 5 minutes.
I think you're missing that the phone was actually locked at 8:49 for Maggie's phone. So the 8:55:36 is just when the backlight is off, but her phone locks forever at 8:49.
But it's moving around, right, at 8:53. You didn't look at the speed at which it's moving, but that could tell us something. There's a Siri activation. I'm just asking my question, Your Honor.
What's the question?
Her phone is moving around starting at 8:53, comma, there's a Siri activation near the start of that time, comma, and then there's a camera activation during this time, and some orientation changes, and then it goes off. Is that all correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you don't know how fast the phone was moving during that period, but that is known, just no one has looked. Is that correct?
So everything is estimation with the phone. It does not track your exact, speed or distance or steps. It's all estimated. So an exact number is unknown.
And you have, I assume from your testimony, you don't know why someone would take Maggie's phone but not Paul's phone?
I would not know. I mean, I'm not there.
I mean,
I would not
given
know.
your job as a SLED agent, I mean, would the fact that the camera was, the phone was in someone's hand and it was attempted to take a picture, would that be an inference you could draw? As
He
to
never
why
said
that
it
phone was
attempted to
taken?
take a picture, from what I heard, but you'd have to ask a technical expert on exactly what that camera function was for.
Well, you see, the thing is that the technical experts, they're not going to say either, are they? It's some investigator is going to have to make some inferences from the data. And the question is it a fair inference that if the camera's in somebody's hand and they're trying to take a picture, that might be why the killers take that phone and not the phone that's in somebody's pocket?
So the way I,
Your Honor.
What's the basis for the objection?
Argumentative.
The response to, by the defense, any response?
Your Honor, I'm asking the investigator whether
What you're asking is the response to the objection is argumentative.
Your Honor, I do not believe it's argumentative. I'm asking if an inference would be fair.
I overrule the objection.
so the inference I'm looking at it is that the camera was trying to identify a face to unlock, which it did not. So that is the inference that I would look at that instead of taking a photo from a layperson perspective.
Right, except that's not an inference an investigator would make, correct? A technical expert would go and see what triggered the camera activation and tell that to an investigator, correct?
I was not, but I am not the technical person.
And I think we covered in some previous questioning that the testimony has been that that's knowable, but no one has checked. I kind of switch over to Paul,
Okay.
and just to sort of summarize everything up, there doesn't seem to be any missed activity until the unread text message from Rogan at 8:49:35. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is it correct that his screen does not ever come on again until after the 911 call?
Is screen coming on?
Yes, sir.
I believe it dies shortly after at like 10:30, so I think 10:36.
And I'm aware of the screen
Okay.
coming on after the 911 call, but I'm asking, did it come on at any time between this text from Rogan and those after 10 o'clock times?
Let me just double check. I show a display screen on at 10:20:08.
Okay, so the answer is no?
It does turn on. That's what you asked, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking if it turns on before the 911 call.
Before the 911 call. For the whole day?
Well, it would be about an hour and
An hour.
10 minutes, but
I'm not seeing a screen on before the 911 call. And that 9 to,
so
10 o'clock
incoming
time
text
frame.
messages or calls, if they were received, did not cause the screen to come on.
that is correct.
Is it possible, and I understand this may be a question for a technical person, but is it possible that that's because the battery was at 2%?
Like I said, I would not know that answer.
Did anyone ask, hey, why isn't the screen coming on these notifications?
Unfortunately, I think it's hard to tell, with the experts, but that would be my assumption that it would be either low battery,
That's fair.
trying to conserve the battery because you don't want the light takes so much power. So I would assume that would be the answer.
So after, whatever happened after 8:49, his phone is not prompting him. It's not lighting up when things come in.
I don't know if it's vibrating or whatnot, but according to the data here, it is, it's not lighting up.
Now, I think the previous testimony was that whoever, if anyone saw his lock screen before the phone went dead, after the 911 call, would have seen the yo text. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
They would have also seen this 8:49 text, right?
The 8:49,
35.
35.
Or at least a notification that there were multiple texts, correct?
I would assume so, that's correct.
And there were at least 4 incoming calls from Rogan between 9:10 and 10:08. Is that correct?
I'm going to go off of your account.
9:10 and 28 seconds,
Okay.
9:42 and 17 seconds. I think there's one at 9:57,
Okay.
one at 10:08.
Correct.
The one at 10:08, that would be during the 911 call, correct?
That is correct.
And that would be before, during the 911 call, before Alex Murdaugh leaves the scene to go up to the house and come back.
Based on the data, that's correct.
We don't actually know why the screen came on those two times, do we? At 9:10 and 18, and then 10, 18, and then 10:20.
We do not.
You know how long the screen stayed on those times?
I do not have that.
You don't know if it was 12 seconds? Okay. At the second one of those, the 10:20:08 screen on, doesn't the Alex Murdaugh's phone indicate he's walking at that time?
So we have a start time and an end time. Doesn't mean he's walking during the whole time, but that is what the
Well, is
phone.
this the
That's
start?
what.
I'm sorry, let me just ask, is this the start? Your Honor, it's just a clarification.
As soon as the witness starts talking, then you start talking? Who's talking? Were you talking? Yeah. Well, go ahead.
So the phone parses the data. It gives you a start time and an end time. Doesn't mean they're walking during that whole time. It just takes a start time and end time and gives you that data.
Sure.
So to say that someone's walking during the whole time would be, unreasonable.
After the 911 call, was Rogan the first person Alex Murdaugh called?
After the 911 call,
Yes, sir.
calls at 10:06:14. That you said Alex called?
Yes, the first person he called after hanging up with 911. Was it Rogan?
I have at 10:17:46. He calls Randy Murdaugh.
And that's his brother, correct?
That is correct.
Who was the second person he called?
He iMessages Randy and then calls Randy Murdaugh again, and then John Marvin.
John Marvin is another brother,
Yep,
correct?
at 10:19.
And then the third person he calls is Rogan, is that correct?
At that time, yes.
And is that about 2 minutes and 30 seconds after that first screen on time?
That's correct.
Okay. So not immediate, not the first person.
I think you're referring to that question that was previously during the 911 call. This is all after the 911 call.
Right. The question is, it's about 2.5 minutes after Paul's phone screen comes on that there's a call to Rogan, and it's the third person that Alex Murdaugh calls. Is that correct?
That was at 9:08. Wasn't the screen on?
No, 10:18 and 53 seconds.
That'd be correct.
So I think we went over that anyone who was looking at could see what was on Paul's screen, would see multiple missed messages, calls from Rogan right on the screen.
I would assume.
Even a call coming in during the 911 call.
I would assume, but
Okay. So as an investigator, do you think it would be terribly unreasonable that after calling other family members, someone would call the person who is the best friend of the dead son, who had multiple missed messages and calls, and even a call coming in during the 911 call? Is calling that person to ask what happened, what's going on, is that, to you as an investigator, an unreasonable thing to do after calling other family members?
I would, as an investigator, I think that would be very odd, given the scene and the whole situation, that you're on the phone constantly, yes.
That you're standing there next to your dead son, his phone is ringing for
Yep.
someone, and you call that person after calling other people.
Yes,
would be
because I
unreasonable.
am standing over my son and wife, and it's just witnessing that for the first time. I would think that would be, to have someone on their phone constantly like that, right after, given the scene and the situation, yes, as an investigator, I would think that is very,
It wouldn't be someone trying to find out what happened.
at that moment, that would be the last thing that would probably come through my mind as an investigator, looking at the scene, is trying to figure out what happened minutes after I discover it. I'd be in a state of shock if that was me personally.
And speaking of a state of shock, I think you have in the timeline later on, he reads some spam text message about, I think there's a picture of a woman in a bikini,
I wouldn't call it a spam text message. It's from Michael Gunn, who would be one of his
a
friends.
group text,
A group text, yeah.
and then he Googles the name of a restaurant in Edisto Beach. Is that correct?
That is what comes up on his phone
And
extraction.
doesn't he also call a videographer he hadn't spoken to in years?
Can you give me a page number to refer to?
Yes. Page 42, Brian White, last entry.
That's what the data shows.
So he would seem to be in a state of shock. None of that makes any sense, does it? You're not going to Google the
I'm
name
not.
of a restaurant after you find your son murdered.
I'm not Alex Murdaugh. I don't know what he was thinking at that moment. Probably wouldn't be on my phone.
Really, you wouldn't be calling family?
I might be calling family, but I wouldn't be
The
Googling
testimony
and
was
doing
that Rogan
stuff.
was family.
If you ask a question, if you want him to answer, you have to give him an opportunity to answer. Proceed.
I would not be Googling and doing other things with my phone, no.
You think he was, do you believe he was Googling a restaurant, or do you think he was fat fingering the phone because he was in shock?
I have to go off of the data, and that's what the data shows.
And you believe that calling family and calling someone that the prior testimony was like another son is unreasonable in the circumstances?
I would say so, yes. Given the fact that you just arrived to the scene, yes.
And had just arrived back to the scene, had actually been there at that point 15, 20, 25 minutes, correct?
That's correct. I'd be doing anything I could to help my loved ones.
This, now, kind of turning back to Maggie's phone, her screen was on at 9:06 and 12 seconds, right? That last orientation change.
Let me flip back to it. You said her screen was on? Is that
Yes.
what you said? Yeah, her phone was locked, but her screen, yeah, for the orientation from previous testimony, the screen had to be on for it to log the orientation changes.
So there was some movement of the phone between 9:06 and 12 seconds and 9:06 and 20 seconds.
That'd be my understanding given previous testimony, correct?
And in this period, 9:02 to 9:06 and 47 seconds, Alex Murdaugh is walking, I think, 283 steps in that time period.
In that timestamp period, correct?
Yeah. But her phone is not. No one's walking with her phone, correct?
The phone is not logging any kind of steps. I don't know if someone's walking with it, but it's not logging steps at that time.
But at that time, Alex Murdaugh's phone is logging steps.
His phone's logging from 9:02:18 to 9:06:47. I believe her last log was in the 8 o'clock, the 8:53 to 8:55.
And at 9:06 and 14 or 15 seconds, Alex Murdaugh calls her phone, correct?
That is correct.
So he calls her phone while walking, or in a period in which his steps are being recorded by the phone, to be specific.
There's a begin time and an end time. He could have stopped walking a couple seconds, couple minutes into it. It doesn't give us that precise data from these phone distractions.
And that time period that he stops walking is 9:06 and 47 seconds, correct? And the car, the Chevy Suburban, starts a second later after that, right?
From the data, correct.
So it's a fair inference that he ends that by walking to the car, getting in and turning it on.
I'm not sure when exactly he got in the car or how long he was sitting in the car before, but this is what the timestamps show, and this is what the vehicle start time shows, and the end time for the steps.
So his phone is stepping, walking, while he calls Maggie's phone, which is moving, but not stepping with him. Is that what the data shows?
That's your inference on the data, but
Well, I mean, breaking it down, his phone is in a period of steps, correct?
unknown when there is steps
Just
during that
his
period.
phone is in this time period of steps, correct?
Correct.
Her phone is not in any period of steps, correct?
Correct.
Her phone in this time period where the phone call's coming in, 9:06, 12 seconds, 20 seconds, there's some motion because there's an orientation change, correct?
That's correct.
And he's calling the phone during this period that his phone's in steps, right, at that moment, right?
I cannot say that he's actually in steps at 9:06:12.
Yes, and you said it, but his phone says there's this period that he's walking, and in that period, between the start and end times, he's calling her phone.
That is correct, but you can see during the 911 call too that there's times where someone could be stopped, someone could be walking, so we don't know if he stopped at 9:05:15 and did the orientation changes and he's right at the car. I don't know that.
Do we know, we'll put this, do we have any evidence that her phone and his phone ever moved together? Not speculation, but evidence showing that they're moving together. Same person moving at the same time with both phones.
Moving together, like physically moving, or functioning in like...
Yes, that they're both moving, the same person is carrying both phones, they're moving at the same time.
I would argue that between 9:06:12 and 9:20 that the same person has both phones.
Because there's an orientation change and no steps on this phone.
You have an
and steps on this phone.
you have an orientation change starting while someone's calling, looking at the phone during that time period.
And would it perhaps be reasonable that someone has that phone and an incoming call comes in, the screen says Alex Murdaugh, and it gets tossed out a window? Is that another fair possible explanation?
That could be your explanation.
Why would that explanation be less fair than what you just said, based on the data?
It's how you interpret the data.
On the drive to Alameda and back, did Alec take any detours from the expected route?
Not that I could see. The route matched up with his interviews.
And in your timeline, we occasionally see these, I guess, infotainment systems coming on, but nothing else happening. The prior testimony was that even the FBI engineer doesn't know why that is. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. He said it could be, you get close to the vehicle. Sometimes when I don't know if you newer GM vehicles, you get close to it and you can kind of hear a little buzzing noise. It's almost like the system's booting up. That's how he described it to me. It could be the key fob being closed. It could be the car unlocking, locking, door opening. Just they don't know what actually caused it, but it's just booting up and running in the background.
When you were looking at the sort of going in and out of park data, Did you look at the data for other days than June 7th?
I did not.
So you wouldn't know whether on other days there are periods in which it seems to go in and out of park repeatedly in a short period of time?
I would not.
You wouldn't know if that happened on 6/4, 6/5, or also 6/6?
I would not, no. I was focusing on June 7th, 2021.
Would looking at those other days and seeing the same thing happen inform your interpretation of seeing it going in and out of park on 6/7?
I was just looking on the day of the murders.
I mean, if it did that every single day, would it seem unusual to also do it on 6/7?
That'd be a question for Mr. Fakowski, who actually looks at that data as a
Would it?
profession. It would.
He's going to make inferences about behavior based on the data, or is he just going to say what the data is?
He could say what the data is, but I wouldn't know an inference. I don't know someone's driving pattern and how they shift, and how would I know that?
And he would?
But how would I know that?
Well, the question really is, if it happens every day, is there anything unusual about it happening on 6/7?
A period of days is not every day. You'd have to look at I would assume, a wide range of days to get,
How many?
I don't know.
If it happened every day for the preceding 3 days, would that be enough?
Every day is a new day. I would not, something could happen different on a different day. I mean, I don't know how you could compare that data. You go different places, you do different things happen during drives. I don't think you could accurately show that.
You showed towards the end some text messages, and one of them seemed to make a reference regarding possible drug use. Do you remember that?
I do.
And that was dated May 6th?
Do you have it? Do you have the copy pulled out? Are you referring to the text from Paul
Yes, I am.
to Alex? Okay. I have May 6, 2021 at 10:52.
And then there was some Google searches by Maggie Murdaugh.
That is correct.
Are you aware of a text from Alec regarding pills to Maggie on May 7?
I would have to see the text.
Show you what's been marked as defendant's 138, which I believe.
Yep. I am very sorry that I do this all to you. I love you. Yep.
No objection to the exhibit, Your Honor.
No, I'll offer what's been marked as defendant's 138.
Let's admit it.
Okay, Elma. So this was Mr. Murdaugh's response to being confronted about the pills that you previously read.
I can only assume this is from Alex to Maggie. The text message I read was from Paul to Alex.
So his family was aware of his drug issues, correct? I mean, from the texts.
I would assume from the text.
And he was aware that they were aware, correct?
Correct.
And they appear to be loving and supporting.
Well, this is Alex to Maggie. If you read other text messages, she never responds to this that day, from what I saw. So I don't know, unless you have what she sent back, or if you can't ask them, I don't know if they were loving and supporting of it. This is from Alex to Maggie.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to see further text messages. I beg the court's indulgence. No further questions, Your Honor.
Direct.
May it please the court.
I was going.
All right, we have the computer up.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have you go to the jury room for a short break. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
All rise.